The moment you stop explaining yourself, everything changes. People lean in not because you speak louder, but because you speak less. Respect replaces resistance, silence replaces noise, and suddenly life feels calmer than it ever did before. We explain ourselves because we want to be understood. We defend ourselves because we fear being judged. But every unnecessary explanation quietly hands your power to someone else. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth yet. In his private writings, he never spoke about controlling people. He spoke about mastering himself, his reactions, his ego, his need to be right. He understood something most people never do. When you stop explaining yourself, your presence becomes your proof. And once you understand this, the world can no longer pull you out of balance. Act 1. The problem, relatable conflict. We explain because we fear being misunderstood. We justify because we crave approval. We defend because deep down we want to be seen as right. Say it with me for a moment. I don't need everyone to understand me. Yet most people live their entire lives doing the opposite. Psychologists estimate that the average person explains or justifies themselves over 200 times a day in conversations at work, online, and relationships. Every explanation feels harmless, but together they quietly drain your authority. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. He wrote to himself, not for the world to see. You don't have to turn this into something. That single sentence exposes the trap. Because the moment you explain unnecessarily, you signal doubt. You invite judgment. You tell the world my inner stability depends on your agreement. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. The louder you defend yourself, the more others feel entitled to question you. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how confident people explain the least they state? They act. They move on. Meanwhile, insecure people talk endlessly, hoping words will fix what only inner alignment can. Reset with me, slow breath in, slow breath out. Remember this. Explanations are not neutral. They either come from strength or from fear. Marcus understood something centuries ahead of his time. Power leaks not through action, but through reaction. And the more reactive you are, the more control you give away. In the next part, you'll discover how a Roman emperor, criticized, daily doubted publicly, trained himself to remain unshaken. Because once you understand his mindset, you'll never explain yourself the same way again. Stay with me. Act 2. Marcus Aurelius' Stoic Insight. Marcus Aurelius was not admired in silence. He was criticized in public, every single day. As emperor of Rome, his decisions were questioned by senators who wanted power, challenged by generals who wanted glory, and misunderstood by a population that only saw the surface, never the burden. History tells us that during his reign, Rome faced wars on multiple borders, a devastating plague that killed millions, economic instability, and internal betrayal. Any modern leader under that pressure would feel compelled to explain, justify, defend. But Marcus did something radically different. He wrote not speeches, not manifestos, but private notes to himself. What we now call meditations was never meant to be published. And inside those pages, we find a man reminding himself again and again, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Pause with me for a moment. Say it slowly in your mind. Be one. Not explain one. Not defend one. Not prove one. Stoicism taught Marcus a dangerous truth for insecure minds. The need to explain is often the need to be approved. And approval is a fragile foundation. Reset your breath with me here. In, out. Marcus understood something psychology would only confirm centuries later. Studies in modern behavioral science show that people who seek external validation experience higher anxiety, lower confidence, and reduced decision-making clarity. Marcus trained himself to live the opposite way. He wrote, "If someone despises me, that is their problem. My only concern is not doing or saying anything deserving of contempt." That sentence is a shield, because when you stop caring about how you are perceived, you gain control over how you act. Marcus faced rumors, he faced insults, he faced open resistance, yet he rarely responded publicly. Why? Because he knew this Stoic law: reaction gives power to the trigger. Say it with me. Reaction gives power to the trigger. Every time you explain yourself emotionally, you confirm that someone else controls your inner state. Marcus refused to hand over that control. Another line from his writings cuts even deeper. Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. This isn't denial. This is mastery. He wasn't saying words don't matter. He was saying your interpretation matters more than the words. And here's where everything connects to you. In leadership studies, managers who respond calmly and briefly instead of over-explaining are rated as 34% more competent and 42% more trustworthy by their teams. Marcus lived this principle daily. He governed by consistency, not commentary, by discipline, not defense, by example, not explanation. Reset again. Notice how your body feels when you imagine not needing to explain. Lighter, calmer, more grounded. Stoicism teaches that your life is your argument, your character is your statement, your actions are your answer. Marcus summarized it brutally. Never explain yourself to those who don't want to understand. He didn't write that for applause. He wrote it to survive power without losing himself. And here is the lesson most people miss. When you stop explaining yourself, you don't become silent. You become precise. You speak less, but with weight. You act more with intention. In the next act, you'll feel the exact moment this insight turns into transformation, when silence stops being uncomfortable and starts becoming authority. Act 3, the turning point. Everything changes. This is the moment everything changes, not on the outside but inside. The moment you stop explaining yourself, your silence transforms. It no longer feels awkward. It no longer feels weak. It becomes grounded. Say it with me slowly. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is control. Marcus Aurelius understood this turning point deeply. He wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." That is not poetic language. That is instruction. Because the Stoic turning point is not about becoming quiet. It's about becoming unmovable. Before this moment, you explain to survive. After this moment, you stand to lead. Let's reset here. Inhale. Exhale. When you stop explaining yourself, 3 shifts happen immediately. First, your silence becomes confidence. Not confidence that demands attention. Confidence that doesn't need it. Psychology confirms this. People who pause before responding are perceived as up to 40% more intelligent than those who rush to explain. Why? Because calm signals certainty. Marcus practiced this daily. He reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice what's missing. No urgency, no defense, no performance. Second shift. Weak opinions lose their grip on you. When you explain yourself, you give weak opinions a seat at your table. When you stop explaining, they starve. Say it with me. Not every misunderstanding deserves my correction. Marcus wrote, "How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks." That sentence alone can give you your life back. Modern data shows that people who disengage from unnecessary explanations experience lower cortisol levels and reduced mental fatigue. You feel lighter, more focused, more present. And here comes the third shift, the most powerful one. People begin to project respect onto you, not because you demanded it, but because your presence signals order. A calm nervous system communicates authority without words. Marcus knew this. He ruled men who wanted power, yet he never begged to be understood. He stayed centered. And here is the Stoic law behind it. A calm mind does not argue with chaos. Say it again. A calm mind does not argue with chaos. Chaos feeds on reaction. Silence starves it. This is the exact point where most people fail and where Stoics separate themselves. Because silence is uncomfortable at first. Your ego wants to speak. Your fear wants to explain. Your old habits want to defend. But if you stay still long enough, something incredible happens. The urge passes, and in that space you discover power. Let's apply this with a real example. Imagine someone questions your decision at work. Old version of you. You explain, you justify, you overload them with reasons. New Stoic version. You pause, you state your decision once clearly, and you move on, no tension. No overthinking. Studies in executive leadership show that decisive leaders who limit explanations are trusted more, even when outcomes are uncertain. Why? Because certainty is contagious. Marcus trained this muscle daily. He wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. That is freedom." Reset again. Notice how different that feels. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop chasing understanding. You stop feeding noise. And in its place, you gain clarity. In the next act, I'll give you the exact Stoic rules Marcus lived by, a practical code you can apply immediately. Act 4, Practical Stoic Rules, Actionable Wisdom. Understanding Stoicism is easy. Living it is where most people fail. Marcus Aurelius knew this. That's why he didn't write theories, he wrote rules. Rules to govern the mind when emotions rise. Rules to protect power when pressure appears. Rules to stop unnecessary explanations before they escape your mouth. Today you'll learn the same code. Reset with me first. Inhale, exhale. Say it quietly. Discipline creates freedom. Rule 1, explain once clearly, never repeatedly. Marcus understood that repetition weakens authority. He wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others." When you repeat yourself, you send a signal, "I need you to agree with me." Strong people don't repeat, they state. Example. At work, you present a decision. Someone questions it. Old pattern. You explain again, and again, and again. Stoic pattern. You explain once clearly, then you stop. Psychology backs this. Studies show that leaders who limit explanations are perceived as more decisive, even when outcomes are uncertain. Say it with me, clarity once, silence after. Rule 2, let results speak. Marcus ruled an empire. He didn't campaign for approval. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Results are the final argument." When you explain yourself constantly, you rob results of their voice. Reset here. Ask yourself, what if I let time prove me right instead of words? In relationships, this changes everything. Stop explaining your worth, start living it. Consistency builds respect faster than persuasion. Rule 3, observe before reacting. This rule is where most power is lost. Marcus warned himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Between stimulus and response, there is a pause. Stoics live in that pause. Modern neuroscience confirms this. A 6-second pause before reacting reduces emotional hijacking dramatically. Practice it now. Someone questions you. You feel the urge to explain. Pause. Breathe. Observe. Say it with me. Not everything deserves my energy. That pause is where self-mastery is born. Rule 4, keep your inner court private. Marcus believed not everyone deserved access to your thoughts. He wrote, "Be reserved in speech and slow to action." Your reasons, your doubts, your plans. These are not public property. When you explain too much, you invite interference. High-performing individuals share less, not more. They move quietly. They let outcomes reveal intention. Reset again. Privacy is not secrecy. Privacy is protection. Rule 5, choose dignity over victory. This rule separates Stoics from the crowd. Marcus wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Winning arguments feels good for seconds. Losing dignity costs you years. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop fighting battles that were never worth winning." And here's the paradox. The less you try to win people over, the more they listen. Daily practice. Do this tonight. For the next 24 hours, notice every urge to explain. Pause for 6 seconds. Ask, is clarity needed, or am I seeking validation? Choose silence when possible. Choose precision when necessary. This rewires confidence at a neurological level. And now you're ready, because in the next act, we bring this discipline into modern life, work, relationships, and the digital world. Act 5, modern application, relatable scenarios. Stoicism is not meant for temples or history books. It is meant for real life, for offices filled with pressure, for relationships filled with emotion, for a digital world addicted to reaction. This is where everything you've learned gets tested. Let's begin with work. At work, stop over-justifying your decisions. Modern workplaces reward speed, confidence, and clarity, yet most people sabotage themselves by explaining too much. They over-justify emails. They over-prepare meetings. They defend decisions that were already reasonable. Marcus Aurelius would have seen this as unnecessary suffering. He wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Notice the simplicity. At work, clarity beats commentary. Studies in organizational behavior show that employees who communicate concisely are perceived as 29% more competent than those who overload explanations. Reset with me. Say it quietly, I don't need to convince. I need to be clear. When questioned, explain once. Then let performance speak. Now relationships. In relationships, stop explaining your worth. This is where explaining becomes emotional. People explain themselves to be loved, to be chosen, to be understood, but Marcus warned against tying your inner stability to others. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In relationships, over-explaining sends the wrong signal. It says, "My value is negotiable." Strong bonds are built on presence, not persuasion. Psychologists confirm this. People who maintain boundaries and speak less defensively are perceived as more emotionally secure, which increases attraction and respect. Reset here, breathe in, breathe out. Say it with me, I do not explain my worth, I embody it. Silence in relationships is not withdrawal, it is self-respect. Now let's talk about the most dangerous arena. Online stop feeding misunderstandings. The internet thrives on explanation, on reaction, on outrage. Marcus Aurelius lived without social media, yet he predicted its chaos perfectly. He wrote the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. Online, every explanation becomes fuel. Every defense becomes content. Every reaction feeds the machine. Data shows that engaging in online arguments increases stress hormones by up to 60% even hours after the interaction ends. Stoics opt out. Say it with me, I choose peace over proving a point. Silence online is not surrender, it is sovereignty. You don't owe strangers clarity, you owe yourself calm. Reset again. Notice how much energy returns when you disengage. The deeper shift from reaction to authority. Across work relationships in the digital world, one pattern repeats. The less you explain, the more grounded you become. The more grounded you become, the more authority you project. Marcus summarized this beautifully. Be content to seem what you really are. Not louder, not clearer, just aligned. This is where most people misunderstand Stoicism. It is not about silence for silence's sake. It is about discipline of speech. You speak when it adds value. You stay silent when it protects peace. Daily practice. Modern application. For the next 48 hours, reduce explanations by 50%. Replace defense with clarity. Replace reaction with pause. Every time you feel the urge to explain, ask, am I clarifying or am I seeking approval? Choose consciously. Because here's the truth. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop living on trial. And when that happens, life becomes quieter, clearer, stronger. In the final act, we bring everything together, Marcus Aurelius Stoicism, in the quiet power you now carry. Act 6, Stoic closing, emotional resolution. Marcus Aurelius never asked to be understood. He ruled armies. He governed empires. He faced betrayal, war, illness, and death. Yet he never begged for approval. History remembers him not because he explained himself, but because he lived with alignment. He wrote, if you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential. That single idea brings us full circle. Because when you stop explaining yourself, you stop doing what is unnecessary. You stop feeding noise. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop leaking power, and something subtle but profound happens. Life becomes quieter, not empty, not lonely, but calm. Reset with me one last time. Slow inhale, slow exhale. Most people never experience this quiet. They spend their lives defending, justifying, performing. Marcus chose a different path. He wrote, be content to seem what you really are. Not louder, not clearer, just true. This is the final Stoic realization. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be steady. When you stop explaining yourself, you speak less, but every word carries weight. You act more and actions don't argue. You move through the world without friction, and the world responds differently. People listen not because you demand attention, but because your presence commands it. This is not dominance. It is dignity. Marcus Aurelius didn't need applause. He didn't need validation. He didn't need to be liked. He needed one thing only, to live in agreement with his principles. And that is the invitation now extended to you. Say it with me quietly, firmly. I do not explain who I am. I live it. This is not withdrawal from life. This is engagement at a higher level. You choose clarity over chaos, discipline over impulse, silence over noise. And remember this stoic truth. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. When your thoughts no longer chase approval, peace becomes natural. Before we part, here is your final practice. The Stoic vow: take this with you for the next 7 days. Explain only when clarity is required. Pause before every emotional response. Let actions replace arguments. Each time you feel the urge to explain, ask, is this necessary or am I seeking comfort? Choose strength, because once you stop explaining yourself, everything changes. Not because the world changed, but because you did. If this message resonated with you, like this video to support timeless Stoic wisdom. Subscribe to the channel Making Life Better for philosophy that strengthens the mind. Share this with someone who explains too much, and comment one word below: stillness, because the calm mind always speaks last.